Hey guys, I'm Justin with Legato Financial Group. Our firm is passionate about helping educate consumers, which is why we're powering the Gaining Interest podcast. The podcast of quick conversations with industry experts on topics that you want to know about, from sports to dining to healthcare and automotive, and really everything in between. It's hosted by one of the greatest local personalities that I've met, that's John Ramsey.
I'll tell you why I love this podcast, because it's all about community. We used to call it water cooler talk, and that no longer exists. But if it's interesting to you, it's interesting to us. We encourage you to tell your friends. As Justin mentioned, we're going to talk about everything under the sun. We will be gaining interest, and we appreciate you watching. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gaining Interest. As you may know by now, this is a podcast about all things that are interesting and all things that are relevant, powered by Legato Financial Group. Today, we have a topic that is certainly interesting, certainly relevant this time of year, and it's about giving your friends, your family, your guests a positive dining experience. Everyone wants that, but there are a few tricks of the trade. Today, we have an expert. His name is Jonathan Tarullo, and Jonathan Tarullo is not only a general manager and a managing partner, but it is one of the finest restaurants in Louisville, in fact, in all of the country, and that is Volare Italian Restaurant. Jonathan, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here, and thank you for your kind words.
Oh, you wait. It's going to get better, my man, because I am a huge fan of Volare. I'm a huge fan of yours, Josh Moore, and everyone involved. But before we get into that real quickly, I think the audience, I know you're an expert. And after our conversations, I'm quite positive that you are. But with that being said, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this industry.
Yeah, well, I was a sophomore at St. X High School in Louisville, Kentucky. And, my friends and I, we were all getting our driver's license. And, we all had, we had to pay our car insurance and fuel, and we had to require. So it was, what am I going to do? I need to get a job. And I was sitting in English with, talking to my buddy he's an attorney now in town. But I said, "Where do you work?" And he said, "I work at Equus." And I'm like, "What's Equus?" And he's like, "It's in St. Matthews. Do you know?" I'm like, "I've never been there. It's a real nice restaurant." So I was like, "Well, can you get me on?" And he's like, "We have an opening." And I think it was a couple months before Derby, if I remember correctly. And so I was like, "Get me on." And he's like, "Well, you got to get a tuxedo." And I'm like, "Tuxedo?" So I remember going out to Sam Myers out off Bardstown Road to their wholesale place, got a tuxedo, show up, and I remember Jim Cover was the maitre d' there for a long time, and I interviewed with him, and they hired me on as a busser, and I believe I worked one day in the dish room, Mondays, and that's how I got my start, working for Dean Corbett at Equus on Sears Avenue.
So you mentioned Equus. We talked about Volare, where you are currently a managing partner and general manager. So, and you have some other well-known, well-respected restaurants that you've worked for as well.
I've got to work for some great people. Left there, after 11, 12 years, and now I got to work for Vincenzo and Agostino Gabrielli down at Vincenzo's.
That's royalty there.
Yeah. I was 2 for 2. I felt like it. So I got to work for the best in the business, and going to work for Vincenzo and Agostino was obviously a reflection of that. So worked for them for about 6 years. Help them different roles, general manager, whatever Vincenzo and Agostino needed, right hand. I felt like I got to work with them on a day-to-day basis, and it's a great experience.
And now you're considered one of the best in the business. So let's talk a little bit about the attributes it takes to really be a great host, because this time of year, and actually it seems now it's every month of the year, as whether it's a birthday, an anniversary, there's reason to celebrate and the reason to want to impress your guests and your family with a dining experience. So let's talk about some of the attributes. First of all, you obviously have them. I think you have to have a natural propensity to want to please people, to help people, to give them that experience, and that is a compliment. What does it take for a host or a hostess to really have, what kind of attributes do you recommend they have to throw a great party? Because there's always someone who throws a great party, and we can't put our finger on why. What is it?
Well, for me, I don't know if I throw great parties or I'm a great host, but, I'm not a singer or a dancer per se, but, I tell everyone that works with us, I'm like, we only offer things that we can accommodate 100% and do it to the best of our ability. Whether you're coming in for your anniversary, you need a floor arrangement, or you need a violinist, whatever we can offer, we'll do. And if we're doing it 100%. In terms of hosting at my house or something of that nature, in today's, having something for everyone. accommodating dietary restrictions to preference, just, making sure you have something for everyone, making everyone feel comfortable, not out of place. And I feel like we do that at Volare on a daily basis. But when I have people at my home, I want to make sure that we have something for everyone, whether it be food, conversation, entertainment, or whatnot. But I think just making everyone feel like they're the only one in the
Yeah,
room.
and you do that very well. So let's talk a little bit about the ingredients for those who may be planning a party or a dining experience. Let's talk about everything step by step here. So a little bit on atmosphere. I know when I go into Volare, there's usually some soft music. It's candle lit, maybe a little bit of jazz, white tablecloth. You have the stone
Yeah,
exposed. It's a very Italian feel
yeah.
to it. You've got the glass artwork, all of that. All that's part of it. But at home, atmosphere. How important is music, perhaps a theme of some sort? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I have a great partner at home, and she handles a lot of things in terms of that. Her style, she always likes fresh flowers. Whether going to see Eddie Kraft and Anz and Kraft or Wayne it in Bloom, or obviously they're great in their craft as well. Flowers, candles, a soft music perhaps in the background. But when it comes to food, and Chef Josh, he'll tell you. I mean, he helps me out a lot with anything. Just having all those elements that bring it all together. So we host from time to time at the house, mostly at the restaurant, but we try to have something for everyone. We never want someone to feel left out, whether it's a kid, an adult, or the neighbor coming over. So we're constantly trying to make sure we have something that would curtail to them. And whether they're allergic to barley or they like seafood or they're a shrimp cocktail lover, we have try to have something for everybody.
Jonathan, you just mentioned Chef Josh Moore, and he certainly knows his way around a menu,
Yeah.
fresh, Italian inspired, great stuff. So everyone's party may be different. They may decide that, well, we're going to do a little continental, we're going to do some Mediterranean or Italian.
Yeah.
With that being said, what are your recommendations as far as how complex a meal should get? I think obviously it probably depends a little bit on the occasion, but let's assume someone's throwing a holiday party. What do you recommend? Do we recommend appetizers as they come in? How far do we go here?
I think it depends on kind of what you want to do. If I'm hosting a holiday party, I try to, elegant but casual. Like, when I got started with Dean Corbin in this business, it was, what fork and everything. And, yeah, I never want anyone to feel out of place. So usually if we're hosting at our house, we have the Chef Josh experience on terms of the food, but we're also, I usually have some heavy hors d'oeuvres. And then if we're having a plated meal and sit down, it's usually something that can accommodate most people. We'll do a sliced tenderloin, not too rare, but medium. I think that's a kind of a middle ground for everybody. So usually if we're doing something for Christmas or, Thanksgiving or something of that nature, it's usually sliced tenderloin, shrimp cocktail. There's some vegetarian things as well. Chef Josh's penne vodka, a charcuterie board for some of the hors d'oeuvres, something of that nature.
Jonathan, you almost answered my next question, which is, okay, what kind of balance do we want here? You mentioned right there, you mentioned two kinds of meat. You
Yeah.
talked about a seafood
Yeah.
and perhaps some kind of steak or some kind of red meat. As far as sides are concerned, appetizers are concerned, what kind of balance are we looking for here?
It's all about balance, like you said. I mean, not everyone wants the macaroni and cheese and I usually have either, like an asparagus, sauteed spinach, something of that nature in a salad. I always probably will have a fish, and usually salmon's my go-to, or chef's got some halibut or something of a white fish that's flaky, that's affordable for if we're buying sides of fish. But and then the meat is usually a tenderloin or something of that nature, or a pork tenderloin, beef tenderloin, something of that nature.
I
Um,
think we all want to show what we can do in the kitchen,
yeah.
but is there a time to be bold and maybe a time to back off?
Yeah.
Can you do something that's a little creative, maybe a little bit more spicy, and then have something for those who maybe are coming to your party that are not into spicy food, want something a little
Yeah.
bit more, I don't want to say bland, but something more basic?
Yeah, I kind of keep things simple, keep people in their safety element. Um, you know, I, I love certain things, but I think the crowd probably wouldn't. Lamb lollipops is excellent. It was a go-to for a long time, but not everyone eats lamb. Salmon seems like it could be a crowd favorite. Beef is always a crowd favorite, but you know, um, I try to keep it when I'm hosting, say 30 people that are families from all different places. I try to keep it simple but elegant, and that's kind of how I do things. You
Attention
know,
to detail is important, isn't it? You and I have discussed this as your training. It was a lot of people who really believed in details and everything matters, whether it's the music, the way the table is set. Let's
yeah.
talk about that. Is that still a thing? Is there a proper way to set a table, or has that gone by the wayside? Is that something that will remain forever?
I mean, the table, I remember working for Dean, we had, that felt like the chargers were 20 pounds at that time, the plates, and you had, four forks on the table and your bread plate and stuff of that nature. I think I think that's a great look, and I always see everyone's holiday pictures, and it's just like it's wonderful. I don't know if that would work for my gathering, but um, you know, the way we do things, we if we're doing a buffet or heavy hors d'oeuvres, we have the silverware there. It's just kind of elegant plates, elegant silverware, but in a casual setting. If I was going to have maybe 10 people at the house, I would love to do the plates and stuff. And, getting back to my roots, Jim Cover, the maitre d', everything is, an inch, or whatever it was, the dimensions he wanted for that setting. I still think that's useful in certain situations, but maybe not for 40. So, when people come to my house, we have the nice plates and flatware, we get that stuff out, but people are kind of casually, we have a dining room table, breakfast table, but it's a little more casual in my house.
So
So
let's assume
every
you have.
situation's different.
Yes, it is different, but here's something that remains the same. So let's say you've got the table set, you've got your menu set, the music's on,
Yeah.
you have everything just right. This is something I know you're an expert at because I've seen you in action, my man. Jonathan, you're very good at this. When people come in the door, to make them feel special and welcome, there is an art to it. I think there are some people who are very good hosts or hostesses, and there's others who maybe aren't so adept. Give us some tips. How do you greet people when they come into your party, or perhaps there's someone they brought a guest who
Yeah.
you don't even know? How do you do this?
Well, I love to talk to everybody, but my wife, she's a little more quieter than I am, and I know like sometimes when we're in large groups, it's hard to engage and stuff of that nature. With people that come to my home, I try to I steer towards those people. I want to make them welcome. Immediately go to them and say, "Hi, nice to meet you." Whether it's a new girlfriend, boyfriend, or the neighbor, just coming to Thanksgiving dinner. I try to go to those people and make them feel special. Make sure they're accommodated, whether it's offering them a beverage or something. Because a lot of the same people you have over to your house, they know where the ice is, they know where the bourbon is, they know, where the wine is. But I always try to, and if you're coming in the restaurant, if I don't know you, I'd like to get to know you. And if you have any questions, I want to answer it or I want to accommodate you 100%. So whether it's at home or at the restaurant, going to the people that maybe it's their first time in, you want to make them, you make them feel like it's home, and that's what we try to do on a daily basis.
Jonathan, you seem to have a really good memory. You know a lot of people. You're well connected. With that being said, is there a trick to remembering names? Because you see some of these people sometimes frequently, sometimes
Yeah.
infrequently. How do you do that? I've watched you. You go, hey, hey, Tim, hey,
You
Tom,
know,
hey, Carol.
yeah, it's I'll tell you, it goes back to my Equus days with Dean Corbett. So and Joy Perini that used to run the bar over there at Jack's Lounge.
Mhm.
Worked for Dean, like I said, for many years. Well, in college, and I was 19 or 20, and they were like, "Hey, the bar next door of Equus, Jack's Lounge, the girls, the cocktail waitresses, and the bartender, they needed some help, so they kicked me over there." So I'm 19, 20 years old, and at that time, at 20 in a day, you could serve alcohol. You could become a server, and I just recently changed, but 20 in a day back then. And I was like, Joy, if anyone doesn't want to work, I'd love to learn how to serve. I would like the opportunity. And she was like, well, you got to know it. You got to know them. These people come in all the time. You got to know their names. You got to know their drinks. You got to know, and I feel like from that point, I became fixated on like, so and so drinks vodka on the rocks with a twist. And I just kept associating, the Monday, I remember it was Monday, my first opportunity. Two groups of people came in. A group of guys that came in because the country club was closed. A group of ladies came in. They had a book club. And Joy finally gave me an opportunity, and she always took care of these groups. These were her crew, you know. But she's like, all right, we're gonna start you with the book club, ladies, you know. So Mary had a, Sterling Chardonnay with a glass of ice on the side and all this stuff, and I just became, that's how it started.
That's
It
part of
wasn't,
making people feel
and I
special,
just
right?
started associating,
Yeah.
Mary likes Chardonnay, and that's, so I just, the names and where people come from. It fascinates me, and I always like to know, what is this? He's having a great dinner. They're in suits. What do they do? And I just always like try to, whatever I gain from that meeting, I always try to like, just store it, you know, and if so and so needs something down the road, I'll be like, oh, well, John does this with this. He can help you out, and that's kind of how it started.
Nice.
But it started at Jack's Lounge, my first table I had. It wasn't until years later I didn't know it was never a book club. They never discussed any books. It was just a excuse to get out from their husbands, I think. And they told me that 10 years later. I always thought they were doing a
Sure.
book club, but yeah,
Books were never mentioned. It's
I
okay.
took I took care of those ladies for a while and worked with Joy, and that's kind of how I started learning names and people and what they did, and
A couple of beverages and books
yeah,
aren't
yeah,
so important.
yeah, yeah,
But I agree with you. There is a special feeling when someone remembers what I drink.
yeah.
It feels like I matter, and that's important. I have a philosophy, and I want to run this by you before
Okay.
we continue here. I have a philosophy. Okay, so it's kind of like, to me, when you go to a restaurant, the food can be so-so. But if the people were really nice and they made you feel special, I'm coming back. You can go to a restaurant where the food is absolutely mouth-watering, delicious. It's a 10 out of 10. With that being said, if the people aren't nice, whether it's the waiter, the host, whoever, then I'm done. I'm out.
hmm
Do you find that to be true? And speak to the importance of the experience, not just the food, but the experience.
It's all about the experience. The first time I tell the valet at Volare, I said, "You're the first impression, the last impression. They're gonna see you. You're gonna take their car. Those that choose the valet or the hostess, you're the first line of defense. We got to welcome them immediately. We got to get them seated, then the waiter, and then hopefully, I'll come by and maybe chef. I'm very fortunate. My partner, Chef Josh Moore, he knocks it out of the park on all accounts on the food aspect. So I gotta stand up to that. But you know, to get people in the door is hard enough, and we're very blessed. And I know other places struggle. To retain that is obviously a challenge, and you want to make everyone. That's where I feel like we knock out of the park. We have 65 people that we work with over there, and everyone is fantastic, and everyone welcomes everyone in their own way. And I feel like just making it feel like home, and that's what we try to do daily.
I'm going to get back to Josh Moore, Chef Moore, and his food. But first of all, let's talk about timing. So when a guest walks in, you gave us a nice tip. You said, "Hey, have a drink ready. Show them where the appetizers are, whatever
Yeah.
the case may be." So talk that to me. If I'm playing devil's advocate, a lot of times that's a complaint with the restaurant. It took too long to
Yeah.
get this. I couldn't get this. Talk about the importance of timing and how do you keep that train running on time?
Well, I mean, you come in with your family and you're celebrating a birthday or you have another event to go to. You know, we kind of obviously we don't hold this to, and some are plus, some are minus, but as a general rule of thumb for me when planning the floor layout, we try to stick to 2 hours is kind of what we're gauging. Most of our clientele is probably going to do more than one course, meaning they're going to probably do a salad or soup and dessert. So, 2 hours. So, typically you come in, you get seated. I would, hope that someone says welcome within a minute and a half, 2 minutes, get you a cocktail. And then, after that, it's kind of sequential. I mean, chef is wonderful to keep things flowing on his side. That lets us do our thing on the front. So, we cook everything start to finish. Some places don't do that. We do that. So when you order a salmon, it's salmon that's cut and it's put on the grill then. So there's a lot of time that goes into that. So it's usually, it takes us, 20, 30 to prepare each dish. So with timing is everything on our end.
You
So
said a key word right there, though. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jonathan, but prepare. So for those of us who are throwing a party at
yeah,
home during the holidays or
it's
any
all
time,
about timing. Yeah,
it is about time and preparing, right?
yeah,
Because the last thing you want are the guests to be hungry and
exactly,
not have anything with their hands on anything. So would you suggest always have something available, whether it's finger food or
exactly.
heavy appetizers?
So, if at my home, back to Chef Josh, I keep leaning on him. Charcuterie board or shrimp cocktail. We have those hors d'oeuvres that are stationary, but in the background we have the tenderloin that's in the oven. We got the the green beans, the asparagus, or whatever you're serving. You got those accompaniments rolling, but you always have something for someone. Maybe over the side you have cake, cookies, or mini desserts that you're doing. Those things help you out. That's your crutch, but the mains and stuff you're working because you want them hot, that kind of provides some fluff on that, and that's kind of how I do things. Kind of load up on the front end and on the back end, and then in the middle, I'm just focusing on the stuff I can do. I got the tenderloin. I just need to pull it out of the oven, and then everything is there. And then you already have those other things on the other side of the spectrum, and then it brings it all together. So
Good advice.
I mean,
Good advice. There
I
seems
don't
to
know
be.
if I do a good job at that at home, but the
I'm sure
diner
you do.
chef, helps out with that, the
I,
front and the back, and then it all comes together.
I am positive you do. All right, let's talk about something that seems to be becoming bigger and bigger. At first, I thought it's a thing. Okay, so back in the 70s and 80s, it was about wine pairings.
Yeah.
You go to Napa Valley and it was like, okay, red wine with red meat, and seafood, it's the white wine or the Chardonnay or whatever the case may be. Now we even have bourbon pairings, which
Oh
I
yeah.
love because we have kind of become what Napa was in the 70s and 80s. Louisville, Kentucky is to
Exactly.
bourbon now, and it seems to have legs. It's going to go for a while. I think it's here to stay. Talk about pairings and the importance of bourbon.
I remember working at Vincenzo's, and Vincenzo asked me to attend a meeting with the Louisville Tourism and with the mayor's office, and at that time Mayor Fisher, and it was you know the bourbon and food committee for the city to try to make the Kentucky the Napa Valley of bourbon, right? Fast forward 10 years later, I feel like bourbon is doubling, tripling, and you know, um, it's very much part in our restaurant, our Italian restaurant. We have 65 bourbons. We have groups coming in from out of town, and back to what you're saying, bourbon food pairings with wine. Some people like a nice bourbon with a chocolate cake. Some people like a bourbon at a Manhattan to start off with their dinner. So those are very prevalent daily. Wine pairings when I'm doing something at the restaurant or at home, there's tons of different varietals. You can go any direction. I always like to find something that complements everyone. It's all about, something for everyone. If I do a bourbon cocktail at home, I probably won't do something as strong as maybe a Manhattan or something of that, or just a barrel proof or something like that. I'd like to find a cocktail that everyone will like for every palate, not too strong, not too sweet, but something for everyone. And in terms of the wine, I kind of, have a variety, but enough that can encompass the whole meal. And that's kind of what I lean
So
towards.
if you own a restaurant in the state of Kentucky or a home, whether it be in Louisville, Lexington, anywhere in the state of Kentucky, don't you think it's almost your duty as a host to know a little bit about bourbon, right? To know a little bit of history and maybe a few recommendations, right?
Yeah, always I think with anything, a couple bourbons that you would like that you can offer, a good conversation starter, especially if you're hosting people from other states.
Yeah.
Now everyone from every state wants bourbon, but just a classic, a classic cocktail that you could make them, something that would be easy, something you can familiarize yourself. But it'd be like, try John's, bourbon sidecar, his version of it, and I think that's always a good conversation starter.
Yeah, I agree. If you have out of town guests,
Yeah,
give them that experience and make them feel special.
something
Uh,
that's pertinent to
Yeah,
Kentucky.
something that's and speaking of, let's talk about that. We talked about pairings and bourbon and maybe a little bit of wine. What are some of the dishes that you think, as a Kentucky host or hostess, when you're having guests over,
Yeah.
these are go-to? Would they be Southern dishes? Would they be exclusive to this state? Talk about some of the indigenous vegetables
Yeah.
and your thoughts there.
If I was going to host something at my house, what varietals would I have for, say, the beef and other things? I always like to have a great sparkling. Speaking Italian, probably a prosecco. But any sparkling, champagne, prosecco, or even a sparkling out of California is always good to have on hand for some of those hors d'oeuvres or possibly dessert. So I always usually, if grab a couple bottles of prosecco from the restaurant if I'm hosting some people. That always goes well with some of your starter courses, shrimp cocktail, and maybe some of your desserts. I usually, for red wine, thinking Italian, I usually serve a Barolo's, a lighter grape, kind of, or in Brunello, I would go with some heavier wine there. But I always have some California options, so I always have a Cabernet or something like that. And those reds go well with most meats, and they pair well with that. In terms of just white wines, I always have like a Chardonnay, like a Sonoma Cutrer, a local Brown Forman family that goes well. It's a buttery Chardonnay. Can go with maybe one of your salads and the vinaigrette and stuff of that nature. And then I always have a sweeter white wine for those that like the sweet wine, which will pair well with some desserts and stuff of that nature.
Yeah.
So a few bottles, few different
Yeah.
varietals, but they can kind of encompass everything. So but everyone's preference is different.
Sure. These are good tips.
Yeah.
Your chef, Jonathan Moore, has been on quite a few Food Network shows. He's won a few. He's really extraordinary. I mean, at any restaurant in the country, he would excel.
Yeah.
But some of us, we're a little intimidated. You see these shows, you meet someone like Jonathan or yourself who know the food and food industry, and they're very intimidated. And they're saying, okay, I can't do that, but I still want to impress my guest. Can you give me like a sample menu that may be a little bit more simplistic, but still impressive that someone could serve at home, maybe for the holidays or for guests who are just coming over for a happy hour?
Well, I'm that simplistic guy. I'm not,
Me
chef
too.
helps me out a lot, but if I was on my own 2 feet, what would I do? I would always shrimp cocktails always seems like a crowd favorite, and it's something that's easy. The sauce is a few different elements you could whip up or purchase from your local market. But shrimp cocktail, maybe some sliced cheeses, fresh fruit is always easy. Throw some honey on there. That would be me if I had to do this 100% on my own. Salad, you could go different directions, but I think everyone could probably put together something, whether it be like a classic Caesar or just even a field salad with some tomatoes and cucumbers. Entree things, I gotta think. I gotta think what's easy. What can I do that's not too hard, not too difficult. Whether it's chicken boneless chicken breast or broiled pork chops or something like that. I kind of stick to those easy things that I know with light seasoning and just a little preparation and just a little attention we can execute.
See, you helped me so much. I'm thinking Jimmy John's or Subway, man.
Well, I
You've
love
taken it
those
to
things
another
too.
level.
That's my lunch. But I just stick to those easy things. I don't know if I'm going to be rolling out bread, but those things I kind of stick to. Stick to the things that are simple, not too stressful. It's supposed to be a time where you're enjoying yourself, not worried about if the souffle is going to rise. Just sticking to those things that are executable.
I appreciate
Just
that.
keeping it in that lane, and that's the way I kind of do things because I can't get out of my lane.
When you think about Volare Italian restaurant, you think about fresh, you think about Italian, obviously, but fresh is a key word that a lot of people use. But you guys take that seriously to the point of growing your own vegetables. Talk about that.
I like to take credit for that, but to be honest with you, my partner, the chef, has 10 acres in Spencer County, where he resides, and he farms that 10 acres, and we buy 100% of that produce, and it's typically rotational. And for instance, lettuces right now, heirloom tomatoes in the summer, squashes, peppers. Chef farms that land. Him and his family, they farm that land, harvest that produce, and then he incorporates it in about every aspect. So whether it's roasted heirloom tomatoes in the sauces, or the accompaniments on the plate, you'll see that touch from Moore Farm, Chef Josh Moore Farm.
Yeah, and you'll see and taste it, right?
You'll see and taste it, and he does a phenomenal job. And he grows it, he cooks it, we sell it, and he does a terrific job, top notch.
You've been nice enough, Jonathan, to spend time with us and offer your expertise here on Gaining Interest, which, by the way, is powered by Legato Financial Group, and they do everything right here like you do at Volare. So I want to give you your time a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Volare Italian Restaurant, and here's what I want you to do, because I think anyone who has not experienced it needs to hear a little bit about the menu and your recommendations. If I was from out of town and I came in for Derby and the menu was, let's Derby-esque or whatever you do, what would you recommend? You say, go with this because Chef Josh, he really excels in this area. What would you recommend?
Well, I think he does a great job in every area.
Yes, he does.
But we're in our 20th year. We're going to begin our 20th year celebration. We're getting ready to roll out a new menu.
Congrats.
Thank you. We appreciate it, and thanks for your support. Adding some things. Before I even worked at Volare, I went there for Also Buco. Classic veal dishes. We're adding a veal chop. We're adding a lobster pasta. those are going to be some classic dishes that you've seen over the years that were that chefs putting a little more influence on. If you're to come in, our eggplant rotolini, one of our go-tos, vegetarian but phenomenal. The bruschetta, those are kind of classic appetizers you'll always see on our menu. At least it has been for the past several years. Entrees, sea bass. We get all our fish flown in daily. Chef usually does a Chilean sea bass special every day, along with his Fish Friday specials, which are huge. Always give that a shot if you're coming in. He does a great twist on those two things. He's a certified Angus beef spokesman, so usually he'll do a huge steak special. Sometimes it might be a tomahawk porterhouse. Sometimes it might be a fillet. But you'll see those things if you come in.
All right.
So
And it sounds fabulous. That's another advantage I think that people need to be aware of because we're the hub for UPS here in Louisville. You can get fish that you can order it one night and have it the next morning, as fresh as if it just came off a boat, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fish we get in, the sea bass, obviously, we sell about 7 to 10,000 pounds a year. We have a steady stream of fishermen. Chef works with these people directly through Creation, Ron Trinier's company. But the Fish Friday, I mean, they're communicating with the fishermen, and he's getting pictures. It's lined to your table probably within 24 to 36 hours. And to your testament, it comes through, whether it's coming from Honolulu Fish Company through UPS, a lot of it's overnighted. And, for Louisville, Kentucky, we're getting the best of the best.
Jonathan, I have enjoyed the conversation immensely. Okay, so let's make a deal before I let you go. Jonathan Tarullo, who's the general manager and the managing partner at Volare Italian Restaurant. You have a party or I have a party, we're inviting each other, okay?
Yeah, compare notes.
Yeah, and we'll make sure Chef Josh Moore is the cook.
Well, I will need him on my side for my party, but we'll bring him most definitely.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. This is Gaining Interest, powered by Legato Financial Group.